Most of us have rubbed a nettle sting with a dock leaf at some time or other, or perhaps have put a few drops of eucalyptus oil in the bath when you've got a cold. But there's much more to the healing properties of plants than these simple remedies. Plants can literally save lives. Thousands of years ago, we relied on nature to treat our diseases, but the sophistication of the modern age has led us to forego traditional remedies for the power of laboratory-grown drugs. However, in recent years, as we've started to turn back to an organic lifestyle, is it time to rediscover the healing power of plants? That's what I intend to find out. I used to be a doctor before I became a gardener, and so it's not very surprising that I'm very interested in the healing properties of plants. In the next few months, I'm going to go on a journey to discover as much as I possibly can about what plants can do to heal us. And I want to bring some back here to my garden at Perch Hill to grow them. I'm not going to use them to treat serious illnesses. You want to consult a doctor if you're in any doubt about that. But what I want is a living first aid kit to treat my family and myself. I'm going to learn the fascinating history of healing plants, from how henbane, hemlock and opium allowed medieval monks to perform amputations, to how 17th century apothecaries used rhubarb to keep people regular. Also, I'll plant my very own first aid kit, grow herbs to make healing teas, and even make a skin cream from garden flowers to soothe insect bites. But plants still do play a vital role in medicine today, and I'll see how the common daffodil might one day offer hope for Alzheimer's patients like Peter Sharp.
Enjoying the garden myself, obviously one can look at things like daffodils and snowdrops and all the other things with a slightly different light, because actually it's helping towards giving me a better life.
Plant-derived medicine has its roots at the very beginning of civilization, yet enthusiasm for this ancient form of medicine has never been greater than it is today. However, it's easy to forget that so-called modern medicine has only been with us for just over 200 years, and that 2/3 of the drugs we now rely on are originally derived from plant substances. Back in the 17th century, plant medicine was surrounded by myth and folklore. But thankfully, good practice prevailed, and the founding of the Chelsea Physic Garden on the banks of the Thames in 1673 marked a significant advance, with the key purpose of training apprentice apothecaries. Curator Rosie Atkins explains.
It's very important to put it in the historical context. 1665 you had the Black Death, and then 1666 you had the Great Fire of London.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
London was in economic collapse as well as in a terrible state health-wise. And the apothecaries had been given a charter by James I, and they were looking for somewhere to grow their plants, to make their medicines.
So it's really always has been and is still a teaching garden.
Absolutely. I think Sir Hans Sloane described it beautifully as a garden dedicated to the study of useful plants, and I call it London's oldest outdoor classroom, because of course now we teach children as well as adults about the value of these plants in our everyday life.
Rosie took me to see some of her favourites. So this is the opium poppy.
Yes, Papaver somnifera.
It's such a lovely plant. I love it. I love the flowers and the pods.
It looks so innocent, doesn't it?
Yeah. Where does the opium come from?
Well, they actually scratch these pods, and the sort of the gum comes out of them, and then it's collected. But this is another, like the pomegranate, a very ancient herbal remedy. This was also used by the Arabs when it was decreed by their religious laws that they could not drink alcohol. So they would then smoke opium. And then that was how the whole thing started. And they were trading opium with the Romans. But, of course, it's been an immensely helpful plant in medicine.
Mainly the anaesthetic properties, of course, are what we use it for now.
Absolutely. It's morphine as well that comes from the opium poppy. I don't think people often realise that, which is vital medicinally, isn't it? I don't think we've actually come up with anything that works quite so well.
So this is the pomegranate.
Yes, Sarah, it's a beautiful plant actually. It's there's last year's fruit still on the
Isn't that brilliant?
on the branch, and there's the new flowers, which are just the most fantastic colour. This will be covered in flowers soon. It's just a bit early in the season for it. It's full of vitamins. It's a dye plant. The rind is used for worming. Some cultures it's used for snake bite. It's got an absolute multitude of uses.
I didn't know that a pomegranate was hardy enough to grow, and it looks so sort of exotic and extraordinary that I just assumed that it was not hardy.
Well, it's a lot hardier than people think. I think as the weather seems to be getting warmer, I think it's a plant that people should be trying in their garden. But the Chelsea Physic Garden's about 2 degrees warmer than, say, Kew up the river, probably because of the buildings around here. And the river does increase the temperature slightly. So I wouldn't say, north of Scotland it would do so well. But I think in the south of England, I think it should be much better, more grown.
Although the Physic Garden doesn't supply plants for medicinal use, the enormous range of species not only provides visitors with a history lesson in medicine, but is also a feast for the eye. But amongst the beauties, there are some more down-to-earth plants. So you've got quite a bit of rhubarb in the garden.
Well, we don't have that much compared to some of the commercial growers, but when this garden was created, this was called the roots of the barbarian, hence rhubarb, which is, and it came in dried roots from China and Russia, and it was very, very precious because it was such an effective medicinal plant.
What is the therapeutic use of rhubarb?
It's been used for absolute centuries to treat diarrhoea and constipation.
So the two opposite
It's extraordinary.
things.
Absolutely extraordinary, and it's very easy to self-administer because we probably all know when we cook rhubarb, it exudes this wonderful pink juice. And obviously the darker the juice, the more concentrated it is, and it has almost the opposite effect. So if you have it a little rhubarb, you're doing yourself a good spring clean, and if you have an awful lot of it, you'll find yourself in dire straits.
Oh, really? So it blocks you up,
Yeah.
or
Gets you going.
Yeah.
So I think it was the 18th century idea of colonic irrigation, really. I've got something else to show you, which is also interesting. Can you smell the smells in here, Sarah?
I certainly can. Delicious mixture of pelargoniums and
And a table full of
salvias.
sages.
Fantastic.
This is salvias in their variety, and of course a very well-known medicinal plant, particularly in folk medicines. Mouth ulcers, mouthwash, gargles, for laryngitis, for sore throats, all sorts of things that can be, it's sort of antibacterial.
It's said to be really good for memory, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, and I think we could all do with that from time to time. A bit of something that just stimulates the memory.
Yeah.
And I think it's also good for hair wash. You know, a lot of people are still able to put salvias. You could make a tincture yourself and put it on your hair. Very good for brunettes, I'm told.
Oh, really? By the 1700s, the Chelsea apothecaries had initiated an international seed exchange system which continues to this day, enabling them to bring together miraculous medicinal plants from all four corners of the globe. This is an incredibly pretty, amazing magenta flower.
Isn't it a strong pink? It's Catharanthus rosea, and it's a real miracle drug. A lot of people owe their lives to this plant. It's particularly good for treating childhood leukemia.
Do you know what the active ingredient is in it?
Well, it's vinblastin and vincristin, which is
yes,
the
no, I
active
remember.
ingredient. Do you remember those?
I remember those in chemotherapy and chemotherapeutic treatments, absolutely.
We have about 2,000 children come to learn about the importance of plants in the garden, and when the head of education comes across a child who will recognise this plant, they'll say, oh, you know, Madagascan periwinkle, and some even use the Latin name, Catharanthus rosea, and then he'll know that they've probably had childhood leukemia and have been treated with this plant. It's very touching because they'll have a relationship with this plant forever.
I think it's true that somehow if you think that your medicine has come from a plant and from the soil, it is somehow less threatening than the thought of it being made up in some sort of pharmaceutical lab. I don't know why, but somehow it does feel more kind of back to one's roots, doesn't it?
There's something about a plant remedy that
Yes.
I think is what brings people here, because if you're being treated with a drug, it sometimes feels very invasive, but
Yes.
this is, I don't know what it's like to be treated with it, but I hope it's a kind drug.
I want to start planting up my living medicine chest, and I'm going to begin with everyday herbs: thyme, lemon balm, hyssop, sage and mint. The thyme I'm going to go for is really lovely, the common thyme, and I'm going to put 3 of those because that's quite slow growing. And I'm going to put it right at the front of the container so that it'll start to bush up and kind of tumble down the front a little bit. Now, thyme is obviously a delicious herb to eat, and I use it a lot in cooking. Infused in hot water, thyme can be used as a gargle for easing a sore throat. It's a powerful antiseptic, so can also help with coughs, colds, catarrh and bronchitis.
The next one I'm going to put in is a mint, and mints have the reputation, and it's right, of being really invasive. The roots will come out the bottom of the pot and they'll gradually invade the whole of the container. So what we want to do is leave it in its pot and just plant it like that, and then every 6 months or so just lift the pot, chop the roots, and that will keep it contained.
Mint tea is well known to ease indigestion and bloating, but it can also be used externally as a compress to soothe and cool skin. And like thyme, sage is also antiseptic, said to be good for treating mouth ulcers.
And this is actually an ornamental variety, which has the purple leaf, and it looks really pretty. And it also has equal healing properties to the silverleaf form. So that's going to make the whole thing look nicer. And I'm putting it nearer the back because it gets size when it's fully grown.
Traditionally known as the scholar's herb, lemon balm is said to be good for the mind. Apparently, it relieves tension and headaches, therefore improving concentration.
Lemon balm, like mint, can become quite invasive, but it does it by a different route. It self-sows, and I quite like the idea of it just gently self-sowing into the gravel here. So I get quite a lot of lemon balm just outside the kitchen. Again, delicious to eat and really good healing properties. So that goes near the front. And then finally, for now, I'm going to plant hyssop, which is in flower. It's got these lovely purpley blue flowers. And I'm going to put 3 round the corner behind the sage. This isn't a long-lived herb, and so by the time the sage needs that space, these will probably have stopped existing anyway. And meanwhile, they look lovely.
Hyssop also has a calming effect, but interestingly, it's said to be an immune-enhancing herb, so can help as a preventative.
So there I've got the beginnings of my living first aid kit.
At Sutra Isle in the Scottish borders lies the site of a medieval hospital, where almost 1,000 years ago monks practised incredibly advanced medicine with a vast array of their drugs derived from plants. And like today's hospitals, they had to deal with all manner of ailments, from simple tooth extraction right through to limb amputations. Brian Moffat has spent the last 20 years uncovering Sutra's mysteries.
So this is it?
This is it. This is the site of the once powerful hospice of Sutra, the largest medieval hospital in Britain north of York, and this tiny fragment of a chapel is much, much later than the medieval date of the hospital and is a complete red herring.
So what have you found that has proved that the monks were so dependent on plant materials for their treatments?
Plant remains, human remains, actual pathogens, actual diseases, and human blood. Put those together and you've got, as near as you will ever get, an informative archaeology of medical practice.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got here.
One of Brian's most staggering finds was a heel bone from a foot amputation alongside a clump of seeds from black henbane, hemlock and opium poppy, from which a powerful anaesthetic was extracted. These seeds could easily kill the unfortunate patient if the wrong dose was administered, but the fact that the monks were using these drugs regularly proves they really knew their stuff.
We were anticipating mere traces of 500 years of medical practice, but what we found was 50 cubic metres of medical waste.
Gosh, quite a lot.
Now, the intriguing thing is the physical remains of these recipes match the documented remains.
How fantastic. So you've got medieval records of that recipe, and then you found the seeds in exactly that proportion.
Exactly so.
At 1,200 feet above sea level, Sutra is now home to some of the highest arable land in Britain, so plant species are few and far between around here. But the monks had a hidden secret garden of wild plants a short walk away.
Well, here we are on the very edge of Lindeen. Now, you'd have to ask, what do you get from the sides of gorges, which we're having trouble standing on?
Yes.
There are 400 species of plant in a little over 4 acres of land.
That's amazing. What would the number be in the moors above it?
You'd be hard put to reach 50 to 60 species in a square mile on each side.
Well, I can see, I mean, even just from standing here, I can see so many interesting things. I mean, there's wild angelica over there, isn't there?
Yes, it's hard to know where to begin.
I mean, that's tormentil, isn't it?
Yes. Your high street chemist claims the tincture of tormentil in alcohol, is still a satisfactory treatment for all manner of worms, intestinal worms, and for the treatment of diarrhoea. In short, it hasn't been superseded by modern pharmaceutical science.
The extraordinary variety of medicinal plants found here range from the beautifully delicate eyebright used externally to treat eye infections to the potentially lethal foxglove used to adjust the heart rate and therefore flow of blood, which is still used for treating heart disease today.
This would be quite literally a sort of outdoor medicine cabinet for them.
An alfresco pharmacy.
An alfresco pharmacy, yes, that's
Everything is laid on here. And really, this is the ideal month in which to shop.
And on the monk's shopping list might well have been stitchwort, which, you've guessed it, was used to treat a stitch. Yarrow intensifies the medicinal action of other herbs taken with it and helps eliminate toxins from the body. And it would be hard to pass by the golden yellow petals of the bird's foot trefoil, a poultice of which would be applied to sores and wounds to aid healing.
There's water avens.
Oh yes, look at that, lovely. That's beautiful.
It's been claimed to be a sovereign remedy. It works for everything.
Oh really? Is that watermint down there too?
Yes.
Now that's used for sort of indigestion and things, isn't it?
Quite.
Has it always been used for gut problems?
Yes, it's also used in its more concentrated forms, like all the mints are, for easing childbirth.
And what's this great drift of a plant here?
Ah, headache treatment on the march. This is meadowsweet.
Meadowsweet, regarded as sacred by the Druids, is reputed to have many medicinal properties. And in 1897 was the basis of research which led German chemist Felix Hoffmann to create aspirin.
Picking our way through the boulders and past the frothy mass of heath bedstraw. Ah, here's an interesting combination of plants on the bank behind us.
There's lots of things here, isn't there?
Yes,
It's coated in thyme. Did they use thyme for anything?
Yes, from the very beginning they found it alleviated a whole range of oral complaints. your thymol preparation in your dentist's chair has a long, long pedigree.
And then what's this beautiful, bright, vivid green?
A real lush growth of bilberry, blaeberry, bleaberry, whortleberry, wurts. The names go on and on. Blaeberries consumed as either a preventive and a treatment quite simply ward off all manner of fluxes. Now, it doesn't take much imagination to know what they're talking about. Foul food and foul water.
Yeah.
A few blaeberries consumed before the necessity of having to eat bad food.
So you don't get food poisoning?
Well, it seems such a simple measure.
How amazing.
And it's on tap. It's here.
Fantastic.
It's ours.
Food poisoning is potentially fatal, so bilberries are no substitute for a doctor's advice. But the preventative benefits could be useful, so I'd like to grow something similar back at Perch Hill.
Bilberries are wild plants and they're quite difficult to get hold of, so I've chosen a cousin of a bilberry, a blueberry, which are more readily available. The fruits that it bears have all the same properties. They line the gut and so protect against bad food, and they're turning out to be a bit of a superfood in that they allegedly have huge quantities of minerals and vitamins in every fruit. And they contain antioxidants which are said to protect against cancer. So they're a really good thing to grow to eat as a healing plant. I'm going to put this in a big square pot, and I'm just going to tease the roots out a little bit so that it'll settle into its new environment. And then I'm planting it into ericaceous compost because, of course, blueberries are plants that love acid environments and they thrive in ericaceous compost, so that's exactly what I'm using here. It will need a big pot to fulfill its potential, so this is a middle stage pot, and in one this size it'll get to about the size of a water butt, so big, you know, big thing. But in about 2 years it'll need potting on again into a pot about twice this size, and it will then again double and form a really substantial shrub which colours up beautifully in the autumn. So I'm going to water now with rainwater, not tap water, because it's more acid. And again, this is a very lime-hating plant, so you want to be really wary of introducing any lime to the pot at all. And then just to decrease evaporation, and so the amount of watering, and also to suppress the weeds, I'm going to top it off with chip bark. Once the fruits start to blue up, as they will soon, they go this beautiful sort of smoky purpley blue, you must net the whole plant because the birds love them as much as we do.
In 1948 came the introduction of the National Health Service, and with it prescription drugs available to all. So the use of traditional herbal remedies began to dwindle, and along with that went the knowledge of healing plants and their uses. I asked Professor Monique Simmons at the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew why that happened.
After the war, you get a shift in the human population. You get a really more use of the drugs being administered by doctors.
Yeah.
So it's more the magic bullet and not your traditional herbal tinctures, and they were being rather suppressed. Now, we have got a lot of early information about the uses of plants in the 16th, 17th century within UK, but not the most recent times.
To gather and preserve some of this information, Monique is heading a project known as Ethnomedica, where visitors to a variety of gardens, including Kew, are asked to record their remembered remedies.
Now, the aim of this project is to collect the folklore of plants. Now, we would like to be able to capture those traditional uses so that they are available for others to make reference to.
The remembered remedies are being added to a huge database for the benefit of future generations, but also research is being carried out to separate fact from folklore.
It's quite interesting. With the plants that we've looked at so far in the UK, every single one of the 100 plants we've found something new about. But one plant we're really concentrating at the moment is Gallium, which we've actually been working on now a few years. Now, Gallium is goosegrass or creepers. It's a weed. Now, actually, often weeds do contain interesting compounds. To be a weed, you've got to be a good competitor. And, of course, the chemistry in a plant, the components, aren't there for us to use as medicines. They're actually there for the plant's use. And they're often to stop insects attacking them or to protect themselves from being attacked by fungi or bacteria. Now, with Gallium, it was used for a wide range of traditional uses. One of them was treating wounds.
By analysing all the component parts within the goosegrass, Kew researchers have been able to identify the individual active ingredients, and in clinical trials these active ingredients have proven very useful in the treatment of leg ulcers.
There's very little that doctors can use at the moment for leg ulcers. There's bandages and other therapies like maggot therapy that they can use. But doctors are really looking for alternatives, and so if plants can come up with some new ideas, then I think it's going to help patients.
All the herbs that I've planted up make really delicious teas, and they're very good for you too. They have good therapeutic uses. Thyme and sage and hyssop, these three here, all are very good for mouthwashes and for ulcers and for sore throats. And then lemon balm, which is this one, which has really lovely lemony smell if you squash the leaf. That one is really brilliant for memory. So if you've got exams, you've got to stuff lots of that tea in, and it will help you do well. And it has antiviral properties. And in fact, people who get cold sores, apparently it's really brilliant. You can make a tea and then put cotton wool and just literally just put the cotton wool on the cold sore, and it's one of the best ways of healing them. If you're going to make a fresh tea, what you want to do is just take a few leaves, maybe 5 or 6, and just tear them apart so you release as many as possible of the essential oils, and that'll increase the flavour. And then you just pour boiling water over them. And I really like these glass teapots because you can sort of see the whole thing happening, and they look really pretty, the green tea gradually emerging. And so then you leave that to steep for about 5 minutes and then drink it, and it tastes absolutely delicious, really citrusy and fresh. But of course in the winter both lemon balm and thyme aren't so good, they don't grow so well. So with those, you want to store them, if you like them, when they're really abundant in the summer months, so that you can drink the tea in the winter as well. And to do that, you need to dry them. And so for that, you just want to cut a good stem like that. And the obvious thing to do is just to tie the stems up with a bit of string. But, a good tip is that if you use a rubber band, of course, the rubber band will hold them tight as the stems desiccate and they get smaller, and with string they'll just drop to the ground. But also with thyme, what tends to happen is that the leaves actually, as they dry, will just drop off onto the floor. So put them in a paper bag. Just pop them in like that, and then you'll find that all the leaves will drop off into the bottom of the bag, and you can just grab a handful and put them in for your tea.
Deep in the heart of the Derbyshire Peak District, one man's passion for all things prickly lies hidden inside these 5 hothouses. Brian Fern is keeper of the oldest collection of cacti and succulents in the country, and amongst these spiky specimens, it's hard to believe that you'd find anything with the ability to heal.
So what's in here?
Oh, lots of interesting plants. Many of them have got medicinal properties. In this group of Opuntias, there's one called Nopalia coccinellifera, which is widely used in Mexico as a fungicide. And apparently what they do is they split one of the pads from top to bottom with a sharp knife, open it out and put it on the affected part and hold it in place with a bandage.
Really? And that doesn't kill the plant if you take out a whole section?
Oh, no. The bottom of the plant will sprout more and, you've got it there for next time.
They're pretty lethal looking things, aren't they? And the idea that these spiky plants could be in any way helpful, particularly for your skin, is just bizarre.
Well, I mean, there's another one. There's another one here. This is called Opuntia delenii. And I always wondered why I'd seen this plant growing in Canary Isles, because it's not native to Canary Isles at all. It comes from Mexico, and the answer is that it's again used for curing pimples and brazes and the skin.
How amazing! And so that's why they grow so much of it, because
yes,
they know
it was
in the
introduced
Canaries.
because it's a useful plant.
Yeah. And so this tall, funny-looking one, what does that do for us?
Well, it comes from Mexico again, and it grows like a tree. I mean, it could eventually 30 or 40 feet, so that's just a little one.
How incredible!
You call them Mexican cowboy cactus.
Yes, absolutely, the western type of cactus.
It's used by the Mexicans for treating internal maladies. What they do is they take a piece of the branch and boil it up in water and drink the resulting tea, and this apparently cures stomach aches and other internal ailments.
So literally, because it would have lots of branches, so you just lop off a piece and then chop a bit off that to make some tea.
You got your tea, yes.
Fantastic.
Easy and simple.
Yet another warning, I'm afraid. You really need to know your cacti before you make tea with them, as Brian tells me that there are harmful and even hallucinogenic varieties out there. If you're not sure, stick to your usual brew.
Oh, we've got another interesting plant here. It's called Cereus peruvianus, otherwise known as the computer cactus, because apparently it absorbs static produced by a VDU screen or a television screen.
Really?
So, and so anybody sat in front of a television or a computer all day tends to get headaches and eye strain and so on, and this apparently does help.
So it's kind of hearsay rather than scientifically proven?
Oh yeah, I mean it's reputed to absorb the static produced by a VDU screen, and people swear by them. They have one of these per computer, and they said it prevents them getting, eye strain and headaches.
Would it be perfectly happy on top of a computer?
Oh yes, because it'll absorb the light from fluorescent lights and so on.
Really?
As long as it gets at least some reasonable light during the day, and then it'll thrive.
You'll have to make your own mind up on that one, but the healing properties of our next plant are medically proven.
So we're keeping the best till last, are we?
Oh yes, I mean this is a really useful plant. I didn't really think about the uses of aloe vera until my youngest son stuck his finger in the cigar light of the car and ended up with a nasty burn on the end of his fingers. And we slapped some aloe vera onto the end of his fingers, and his wail subsided, and there was no sign of the burn within 3 days.
Gosh,
and that was proof to us that it really does work.
So what do you actually do if you've got one of these growing on your kitchen window ledge or whatever?
Well, all you do is you tear off a piece of the leaf.
Oh yes, look at all that sort of gooey stuff.
Gooey stuff, yeah. And all you do then is just rub that over the burn or scald. It dries and forms an impenetrable skin over the surface of the burn or scald, excludes the air, and then there's an active ingredient that promotes skin growth. And so, it's...
And heals
the burn.
And also, because of the coating, it will exclude any possible infection,
Yes,
won't it?
that's right. That's brilliant.
A brilliant thing. And then what happens to that leaf? Will that sort of seal over? Or?
Oh yes, it'll seal, and then you take another piece next time you need it. Keep one of these on the kitchen windowsill. When you're cooking, burns, scalds are very easy to do, and it's there as an instant remedy.
Of course, if you keep snapping bits off your aloe, you'll end up with a rather sorry-looking stump. Aloe seeds are hard to come by and grow very slowly, but Brian has a solution.
Well, first of all, you've got to take the plant out of the pot
Yes.
to get at the little baby cuttings underneath.
Yeah.
So I'm just tipping off the top dressing and just easing the plant out of the pot, and then gently separate the cuttings.
Literally just snapping them off, not even cutting them.
Oh no, you just pull them off.
Oh yeah, look, and it's already got its little roots.
Yeah.
That one's got fantastic, really juicy yellow roots, hasn't it?
Yeah, and you can see the old remains of the rhizome from the parent plant.
Connecting it to the mother plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're like little runners, almost like strawberry plants,
yes,
aren't they?
Yeah.
And what are we going to pop them on into?
A well-drained compost. They're not fussy as long as it's well-drained,
Yeah.
really.
Okay, so it's got to be deserty-like.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you use an ordinary houseplant potting compost and you put in some grit and some perlite and some nutrients, then that's fine.
Yeah, that one came away very easily, and again, that one's got lovely roots on it. And so in 2 years it'll look like that.
Oh, yes.
And it'll have made its own babies.
Yes, there is a bigger one, and we should pot that one up straight away, and that will grow on very rapidly.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm pulling that
Just
one away
easing
now.
that one away.
There we are.
Fantastic. Oh,
And
yes, look at
that's
that.
just got more than, it's got
Lovely
many roots
roots.
on there. There's a rhizome actually coming from the mother plant.
Yes.
It grows down and then turns
Into
up
the
at the end, and then will turn green. And then that's another plant, another offset.
From 2 years of growth, you would expect to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10
10 small
little
plants.
babies.
Yes. Yeah.
And they'll be this size.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So into the compost now.
Yes. A bit of compost in the bottom of the pot to start with,
Yep.
and
And then
then
backfill.
backfill.
Well, that's pretty
Both
straightforward.
sides. Now you don't have to ram it down, but it's just a reasonable amount of pressure. We top dress with a grit sand. This is crushed calcite, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be this. It can be any coarse grit sand, and you just top dress. Now we top dress it to cover up the compost. It's really there for decoration.
Yeah.
But it also prevents scirofly, which is the
okay.
mushroom fly, from actually living in the top layer of the compost, and the grubs can attack the base of the plant.
And it makes it look like it does in the desert, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it sort of
it looks right.
sets it off.
It looks right. Would you like that one, Sarah?
I would love that one to treat mine and my children's burns. That's fantastic.
Because
Thank
it
you.
could grow on very nicely.
Thank you.
Whilst Brian's aloe is good for burns, the common marigold or calendula is said to be good for many minor skin irritations. I've been looking through some old books and have come across a recipe for calendula cream.
I've picked 100 grams of calendula flowers. This one's a lovely variety called Indian Prince. But any calendula or English marigold will do fine for this recipe. Now we're going to have a little bit of a science lesson, but I know that 100 grams equals 70 flower heads, so I've picked exactly that number. And I've left quite a few still out there, because the good thing about the English marigold is it self-sows in the garden, and so if I leave a few, then I'll have them to make more of my recipe for next year. That looks really beautiful. And calendula has lots of really useful healing properties. It's an antiseptic, and so it's really useful for small cuts and abrasions, and you can clean it with the cream. And what's more is the flowers have tannin in them, which actually help to knit together the skin, so it really helps things heal up. And because of those properties, I want to make some cream out of it so I can use it here.
For 100 grams of calendula flowers, I've added 150 grams of this emulsifying ointment mixed with 70 millilitres of glycerine.
And the final ingredient to the first stage is 80 mils of water. So I just put all those together.
I bought both the emulsifying ointment and the glycerine from my local chemist for about £5.
And then in go the flowers. And you really don't need to bother to chop it very, very finely, because we're actually going to filter out the petals. and the calyxes later on, once the whole thing's cooked. So I just want to mix those 4 things together, and then I'm going to cook them very, very gently in a bain-marie, which is effectively just a saucepan with a little bit of water boiling in the bottom of it. And it just heats it gently, and so won't burn it or destroy the essential properties of the calendula mix. And leave that for about an hour, just to gently cook away.
The added bonus of this recipe is that a wonderful scent fills the house while the flowers steep in the warm liquid.
So, I think this is ready. What I'm going to do is put a couple of drops of lavender oil in the mixture, because that acts as a really good preservative. And I need to do that once it's cooked so you don't destroy the essential oils. And just stir that in. And then I'm going to filter it. In it goes. And I need to have the jar in there already, because as soon as it hits the glass, if it was in the jug, it starts to solidify. Still looks beautiful. And I can see that the cream that I've made is the most amazing sort of sunflower yellowy colour, or I suppose marigold yellowy colour really.
And so to recap, mix your chopped flower heads, emulsifying ointment, glycerin and water. Stir well, then simmer gently in a bain-marie for 1 to 3 hours depending on the strength you want. Add a few drops of lavender oil to preserve, strain the mixture into sterilised glass jars and store in the fridge for up to a year. Applied externally, calendula cream can be used to soothe inflamed skin, such as insect bites, nappy rash, cuts and grazes, chilblains and many other minor skin problems.
And there we are, a lovely pot of cream for our medicine cabinet.
The daffodil is a simply beautiful flower that lights up our lives every spring without fail. But it might surprise you to know that such a common plant is giving hope to sufferers of a frightening and increasingly common illness. 3 years ago, at the age of 64, Peter Sharp was diagnosed as having Alzheimer's disease.
Because of the illness, he's had to give up work, and in himself has probably become a lot less confident. He's a lot less confident about going, for example, to the shops to buy something, or even sometimes the local town, because he might get there and forget where he's going.
It's very difficult, but you feel very helpless. I don't know what other way to describe it really. It's I suppose to some people it'd be their worst nightmare, in a sense. It's like living a nightmare. I think that's probably quite an apt description.
Back in the 1950s, a treatment for Alzheimer's was discovered in the bulbs of the Balkan snowflake. The drug, known as galanthamine, doesn't cure, but helps to stave off the effects of this debilitating disease. Demand for galanthamine almost drove the Balkan snowflake to extinction until a synthesised version was developed. Peter's been taking the synthesised version for 3 years.
What it's done is it's given me a huge amount of stability. It means that you can still be part of the community, you can still chat with a neighbour and not feel embarrassed and all that sort of thing.
Peter is one of the lucky ones. There are more than 400,000 people who have Alzheimer's disease in England and Wales, but many don't have access to the synthesised galanthamine because it's very expensive to produce. That's where the daffodil comes in. Scientist Professor Trevor Walker hopes that he's found a much cheaper way of producing natural galanthamine from this humble plant. Unlike your usual daffodil grower, he harvests his crop long after the flowers have gone over.
These are being harvested at this time because we are taking out our compound, the galanthamine, from the green material coloration like that, and also from the bulbs, after the bulbs, of course, have been washed, destoned, demuddied and dried.
Like the Balkan snowflake from which the Alzheimer's drug was first derived, daffodils produce galanthamine as a defence mechanism against pests. This year, Trevor has planted some test fields high up in the Black Mountains of Wales, a place where daffodils wouldn't normally thrive.
If we stress the plants here by growing them up at high altitude in Wales, we get much larger and commercial quantities of our compound compared with growing them under perfect soft conditions on the fens of Lincolnshire, Cambridgeshire, for example. The standard variety to use is called Carlton, and it's no secret that everyone does that because it's a known, reasonable producer.
Once harvested, the bulbs are shipped off to a laboratory in Cardiff where the galanthamine is extracted.
We basically chop them and we end up then pushing it through a blender and getting a water solution. We treat them with a special liquid which releases the galanthamine compound, and then by other bits of chemistry we turn it into a white powder, which is probably something around 25-30% pure. That would then go off to a pharmaceutical company who would turn it into the drug. So we're doing that little bit of chemistry in the middle.
Even though this research has been going on for well over 3 years, it's still very much in the early stages. But Trevor's ultimate aim is to find a more efficient and therefore cheaper method of producing galanthamine from his daffodils.
There's a whole mess of stuff to be done, and the end result at the end of the day is to have more galanthamine freely available so that it can be put on the national list and made available to patients with earlier stage Alzheimer's disease than they have now. We believe that we can stave off the onset of Alzheimer's disease to a certain extent and bring some help and bring some relief and give the patient time to come to terms with these things.
Enjoying the garden myself, obviously one can look at things like daffodils and snowdrops and all the other things with a slightly different light, because actually it's helping towards giving me a better life. For me, it's something very special.
This garden in Gloucestershire contains healing plants that can treat us through every stage of our lives. It's based on a spiral, with helpful herbs for birth and childhood at the beginning, through old age, and eventually ending up at paradise in the centre. But this is not just a clever design. Many of the species here are regularly used by practising medical herbalist Anne McIntyre.
All this are herbs for young children. This is a nice herb. This is plantain.
So that's a cultivated form of the little wild plantain that we're always desperate to get out of our lawns.
That's right. This is a red cultivated variety, which I thought just looked good in the garden.
Yeah, lovely.
But I predominantly use this for irritation in the respiratory system, causing catarrh, chronic sinus congestion.
But it looks really wonderful and ornamental, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's great.
Anne's spiral design cleverly incorporates plants to accompany our journey through youth to old age, and there's even plants for marriage.
Here we've got herbs and flowers that are associated with love and romance and the kind of things that one might have at weddings, like roses.
Yep.
And rose is obviously a symbol of love. And then there's borage for courage, which you may need to get married. But also, I thought that some herbs here to calm the nerves and help the adrenal glands. So I put borage there. But what a lot of people don't know is that roses are a great remedy for stress. They're relaxing and calming, but at the same time they lift the spirits.
Yes.
Not only is Anne a qualified herbalist, but she also teaches others on the many uses of her healing plants. And although only recently finished, her spiral garden provides an open-air classroom stuffed full of amazing species, each with their own story to tell.
Here we've got a breast-shaped little area, and these herbs are all to help stimulate the flow of breast milk. Fennel, so fennel seed tea is great to stimulate the flow of breast milk, but at the same time, when it comes through the breast milk and passes to the baby, it helps to settle the baby's digestion, yes.
And what's this huge plant?
This is Inula giganticum. It used to be a very famous remedy for TB and pneumonia. So I tend to use inula in most of my recipes for chest infections.
Well, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
After learning so much about the history of healing plants, it's really exciting to meet someone like Anne who's still using them to treat people today.
Around the menopause time is classically the time that we have our midlife crisis, so hence the mess and the jungle of the daisies and good knows what, with a bit of black cohosh thrown in, and there she is having her midlife crisis under the variegated comfrey. The comfrey, I didn't plant Symphytum officinale, the normal green one, because you know what it's like, it's just totally rampant.
Invasive, yes.
Very invasive. But this is very pretty, you can see the new leaves coming at the bottom.
Yes, lovely.
But it has, similar properties. And I put it here because its common name, knitbone, suggests that actually it could be very useful for helping to prevent osteoporosis past menopause.
Do you find that the common English names of the plants, the herbs, often indicates what you should use them for?
Absolutely, because they tell us how the ancients have used these plants and the properties that they found out about them. Knitbone really means that it knits bones together.
Is folklore very important in enabling you to know how to treat somebody then?
We have the best of both worlds living in the world that we do, because we've got all of history, the whole tradition going right back into as far as we've got details about it, how the plants were used. And now we've got the scientific verification of that. And the interesting thing is that so much of the folklore is not actually old wives' tales. What modern science is doing is vindicating the ancients' use of the plants.
And so we go into the sort of culmination of the life and the garden, and you've got lots of rosemary. Why did you choose rosemary?
Partly to create a hedge so that this could be a nice enclosed and peaceful area, because I wanted this to be a sanctuary.
Yes.
Also because rosemary is evergreen, and all evergreen plants were symbols of eternal life because they never die. The fact is that it's also in this whole rejuvenating area, and it's full of antioxidants, and it's a great remedy for the brain and keeping us young. So eternally young.
Clearly, plants play a significant role in both Anne and her patients' lives. But what I also find exciting about this spiral garden is the devotion that's gone into creating such an intriguing design.
I guess this is a story of my life with herbs. And my feeling is that right from the time, or even before we're born, that herbs can accompany us on our journey through life and help us in times of difficulty and enhance our life, not only on a physical level, but an emotional level and a mental level, and perhaps also on a spiritual level. So I think this is my journey with herbs, from birth, hopefully, to paradise.
This container is going to provide lovely things for cooking and for the medicine cabinet, but I also want it to look good throughout the year, and so today I'm going to put colourful things in, like this lovely calendula, which is covered in orange flowers, and it flowers right the way through the summer if you keep picking from it and keep deadheading it. And so that's going to go in the back here. And I love orange and purple together.
In addition to the soothing cream, a cold tea can be made from calendula to use as an eye wash to treat conjunctivitis.
I'm going to put in some lavender in the back here. This is good now, and it goes on being good right the way through the winter, because of course it's evergreen. And so the lovely colour of those two leaf forms and colours together will work well when there are no flowers at all.
You can simply throw handfuls of lavender into your bath to relax muscles, ease aching joints and help you sleep.
And I'm also going to plant some oregano, partly because I love cooking with it and it has good healing properties.
An infusion of oregano leaves can help settle upset stomachs and ease seasickness.
And this is a golden leaf form with very strong flavour and good for tea.
Throughout my journey, I've learnt about plant-derived drugs which are life-saving. At the Chelsea Physic Garden, I came across the Madagascan periwinkle, the source of frontline drugs for childhood leukemia. I've been astounded by the medical expertise of ingenious medieval monks, and I've seen daffodil bulbs growing in the Black Mountains of Wales with the aim of treating Alzheimer's. All of these were fascinating. But what's excited me even more is the accessible remedies that are sitting just outside our back doors or on our window ledges that all of us can grow and use.
I've learnt an awful lot about the healing properties of plants and their history in the last few months, and there's one thing that's become incredibly clear to me, and that is that this isn't just a lot of hocus pocus. This is all incredibly relevant to us now and always will be. And if we take care of our healing plants and acquire the knowledge about how to use them, they'll carry on taking care of us.
Stay with us here on BBC Two. You're the key to survival next, as architectural gems in the Midlands and East Anglia do battle. It's Restoration Village and a quick preview of the variety of buildings looking for your votes in just a second.